Hello everyone, this is Knud from IoT Analytics. I am, as you can see, not at Siemens Place, but I'm in our office in Hamburg, and I wanted to share with you some of the highlights of last week where I attended the Siemens Global Innovation Day. And to be quite honest, it was a pretty impressive event, one of my highlights of 2017, and Siemens was very upfront about what they're doing around what they call digitalization. To give you some context, we at IoT Analytics have been wondering for quite some time what the large industrial giant Siemens is up to in Industry 4.0 and digitalization. One of their competitors, GE, was very early in pushing out their platform, GE Predix, and marketing that to the world. And Siemens had been fairly quiet, and since I would say end of 2016, we're now seeing a big shift in which the German giant Siemens is now also pushing a lot of topics in digitalization, and they say they have a lot of momentum on that. So just to give you a little bit of context of the event, it was in Munich at the Siemens headquarters. They had invited journalists and analysts, and it was quite an exclusive event, even though there was a live stream. And the Siemens CEO, CTO, and a lot of the segment heads were there to discuss with us the Siemens strategy, basically. So the first thing I learned is that the Siemens, I want to share a few Siemens things with you, and then I want to also share some customer stories and general trends in IoT I am deriving from that conference. So Siemens is focusing basically on three pillars, and they have 14 R&D initiatives centered around digitalization. So Siemens focuses at the bottom layer on the digitally enhanced automation electrification. In the middle layer, their IoT platform MindSphere, and then on the top layer, on top of that, all their softwares and services. And then they have defined 14 R&D initiatives, of which I want to deep dive into a few. One of them is additive manufacturing, another one is blockchain, another one is data analytics and AI. Simulation is another one, digital twin. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but the list is pretty comprehensive and ranges from e-mobility all the way to cybersecurity. And they have increased their R&D budget 40% over the last 3 years. The whole company has, which is quite impressive. So one of the things that they really talked about, and that's the topic of digital twin. We've been talking about it here at IoT Analytics, because Siemens is obviously not the only one mentioning it, but they were showing us the importance, and they were so kind to give us a tour of their R&D lab, and so we could see a little bit more in detail what they're actually doing and what that means in practice. And so Siemens believes there are at least 3 types of digital twins. One is the product twin, then there's the production twin, and then there's the performance twin. So product twin, basically the 3D design, the virtual replica of the product, then a model that shows how to produce this product, and then a model, basically performance, how to use that product in practice. And it's actually way more complex than that, because behind these models are further models, and one of them is the mechanical model, one is the electric model. And if we want to do data analytics and AI, all of these have come together. And not only come together, but actually the computer needs to understand and make sense. They need to be contextualized. And they gave a very good example of basically saying, look, if you are a human and you see a lion in the wild, there's 2 kinds of memories that you look onto to understand what's happening here. You have your episodic memory, in which you understand, oh, I was maybe at the zoo as a small kid. This looks like a lion. And then there is your schematic, they call it schematic. There's basically the semantics that tell you, oh, a lion is a dangerous thing. And this kind of stuff, which is normal to humans, is something we need to teach machines, and especially in industrial environment. When you see a sensor reading that is a temperature, you need to understand what are the different attributes, what does that mean, what's the implication that can have for something else. And this is basically a huge thing that Siemens calls the knowledge graph that is underlying all of these models that they're building. And they have hundreds of people working on it. They say, look, this is still years out from being where we want it to be. The CEO was so candid to say that on the digitalization journey, he thinks Siemens is on a 3 out of 10, so still a lot to do, still not mature in the sense where they want to be. And I got a pretty good view that it's really quite, they are pushing it, but it's also still a lot of things they need to do. They were showing us some graphs in which they are doing this kind of knowledge, so we're giving us some examples on the different machines and attributes and everything. And I guess the trend there, to summarize that, is to go from, we're not talking about one digital twin anymore. We're actually talking about what they call multi-physics digital twin, which is you need to have a twin for different kinds of models, such as mechanical and electrical, but then you also got to combine that for different use cases. You want to be able to somehow aggregate the mobility use cases and perhaps also the energy use cases to make these things communicate with each other. And that's really where a lot of the R&D effort is going right now. So that's one. Second topic, very quickly, blockchain. Obviously in everyone's mind right now with Bitcoin. Siemens CEO was very clear. He said blockchain is just a distributed document, so he didn't really put a lot of, he doesn't believe it's magic. He was very critical of Bitcoin. He said Bitcoin is a tool for money laundering, and he says Siemens is testing blockchain in energy trading, and he was saying he can envision applications in logistics. That about blockchain. Then the other big thing I want to talk about is AI. It's a huge thing for Siemens. I would say out of the researchers that we talk to, 2 out of 3 on average, I would say, are looking into AI. And Siemens has a number of things, and they have their own sort of classification of what they believe AI is. I just want to share a few use cases that they are working on. First of all, AI-assisted design. So they are building algorithms that basically help in designing pieces based on the sensor data they get from the products in the field, so that a computer basically makes recommendations for the next generation product, how to best design something so it's optimized for usage in the field. That's one. Another one is they combine simulation, and we're an area that Siemens has traditionally been quite strong in due to an acquisition they made years ago. They combine simulation and AI, and or machine learning rather. So one thing they showed was someone has a HoloLens on, they turn off a motor, and the simulation is still simulating what's going on inside the motor. And what's the important information for the worker here is when is the motor inside, everything is stopped and it's cool enough so I can touch it again and I can open it perhaps. They say in practice, because they don't never know exactly, there's sometimes a 20-hour mandatory delay that people cannot touch the machine. And in this case, they simulate what's going on inside. Because the simulation is pretty accurate, they are able to touch the machine and open the machine a lot earlier, because the person can actually see, in this case through the HoloLens, that everything inside is cool and has stopped. And so this is one of the, perhaps a pretty specific application, another one. They also talked about autonomous robotics. They showed robots that are basically smart enough to see that something is not right. So they were stealing the parts from the robots. The robots realized, look, hold on, someone stole my part. I got to look for it. I got to go back to the sequence. And so basically going away from pre-programmed robots to some robots that realize and can adapt to the situation. And that's what they call autonomous robotics. Then we also had something which is artificial intelligence for process control. As you know, right now, a lot of factory and machine processes are basically hardwired on a so-called PLC. but Siemens is experimenting with doing some of that logic in the cloud based on data sets. Perhaps the data sets change. So in the cloud, there is a retraining of that logic. And once that retraining has happened, they push the logic down to the PLC, where there could obviously be a new logic every time they push from the cloud to the PLC. So this is their idea. In the first instance, they didn't do that with the logic. They actually did this with a computer game that showed how on the PLC, a self-learning algorithm was playing a very simple game against itself. But the idea to go there is quite an interesting one. And I think we've talked also before that PLCs probably will evolve quite dramatically over the course of the next years. There are a few other ones. I don't want to go through all of them. Another topic, obviously, is additive manufacturing, 3D printing, in other words. I personally always thought it's about complex parts that you can otherwise not manufacture, because 3D printing, you go top on layer, top on top on top top, and it's you can build very complex structures because you just design them and print them, and then with other methods it's quite difficult to achieve that. But there's actually two more reasons why Siemens believes additive manufacturing is important. They were showing that very nicely. One is in specific instances, you save a lot of material when you do 3D printing, because you don't need all the support material to build on something, but rather really only have those materials. And they were showing some kind of tube structure where they saved 50% of material. And the other one is a topic of replacement of broken parts, where they said, look, there's a piece that broke off one part. We basically print on top of that, and then perhaps do some kind of deburring or at the after that, so things are smooth again. But basically, rather than replacing the part, just quickly fixing it by adding material, and that works as well. Also want to talk about IoT platforms. Obviously, a huge topic on our side. MindSphere is the Siemens platform launched in 2016. I guess I cannot say too much because Siemens is planning for MindSphere 3.0 release at the beginning of the new year. But by the looks of it and the looks that we got there, they really made a huge improvement. There were some critical, we heard some critical comments from people who were using it, who were complaining that there were important pieces missing. I can tell you from my early look, that seems like Siemens has listened to those people, and they have added quite a lot of features in terms of big data capabilities, APIs, and by the sounds of it, they are really trying to make that platform robust and I guess not only using it for their own products, but really in the market. And they had a few customers there who were talking about what they had initially built on MindSphere. And I thought that was fairly impressive, because one of the customers was a machine tool manufacturer in southern Germany, and we've been talking about the topic of machines as a service for a long time. So you can, rather than selling a machine, you have a pay-per-use model like you have in software. And we hadn't really seen a lot of adoption of that, but they are really going for it using MindSphere. They are basically selling the machine by the hour, something we've only seen with Rolls-Royce in the aircraft industry, but now we're also seeing it in other industries. Additionally, they're using MindSphere for some other maintenance-related services that they offer to their customers. And they say on the customer side, this is a huge success. They've already sold a number of machines. When they announced it already, customers love it because they can always just have the newest machines and have it replaced maybe every year or every half a year, if that's what they wish to have. Plus, they have a lot more flexibility. I thought that was quite interesting. They had a good panel as well. The CEO of Rolls-Royce was there. The CSO of Adidas was there. They had a good chat. And Siemens also has, by the way, launched what they call MindSphere application centers, 20 of them around the world, where they aim to invent together with the customer on their platform. I guess it's similar to some of the strategies we've seen from like IBM 2 years ago, that were opening all these IBM Watson centers, and so it remains a little bit to be seen if Siemens can get the traction and perhaps get more traction than some of these other players who were, I guess, hoping for more business out of these centers. So that is to be seen. But one thing is really clear: Siemens is serious about it, and they are bringing along a number of existing customers. And Siemens is already present in so many places in this world. I mean, for example, they were also saying that they are basically supplying a large piece of the automation in the Tesla Gigafactory. At least that's what I heard through the lines, even though they were not saying it openly like that. Perhaps just two more aspects that I thought were also interesting. Siemens is moving into other spaces as well, specifically the topic of electrification. And when they talk about electrification, they have two projects which I thought were particularly interesting. One is they're equipping trucks with the same technology that trains have. So basically, they have these things on top that can get electricity from the lines if there's a line above the road. And in Germany, there is actually now the first roads being equipped with a kind of electric grid on top, over the road. And so they think that trucks running on is basically a train-like system on the roads is something that we may see, and it's an interesting one. And even more interesting, perhaps, Siemens has never been a producer of turbines for planes, such as GE has or Rolls-Royce. But Siemens is now entering the market into electric turbines for drones. So basically for drones that can carry people, 2 to 4 people, and no combustion engine, but actually an electric engine. And I thought that was interesting. They were telling me that these electric engines, there's about 15 decibels less noise. Right now it can run 20 to 30 minutes for a 2 or 4-seater drone on a battery. Hopefully the battery improves. Siemens is working with Airbus together to achieve that. But you can really see they are moving ahead, and they already have more than 100 people working on that topic, even though this hasn't been sold yet. It's still in the phase of well, being rolled out to the market. All in all, very interesting event. Very interesting insights, I would say, I received from that, and I hope you found it insightful as well. That closes out the IoT Analytics year. We're back next year, and hopefully with some new insights for you. Leave your comments below if you have some. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.